and welcome to Talk Art. I'm Sally Rain, and I'll be your host as we delve into the world of the artist and the art that's all around us. Talk Art is sponsored by the Silicon Valley Open Studios. During the first 3 weekends in May, hundreds of local artists open their studios to the public. For more information, go to the website svos.org. Our guest, Paul Giacomantonio, is a stonemason who creates beautiful water features. He also is a multiple patent holder for microfarming designs. He creates food and grows food in art installations using aquaculture, solar, and wind energy. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you for the introduction. It's nice.
Yeah, you're welcome. So you have some very interesting ideas about food and water and how art can be related to those things. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved with microfarming.
Sure. I got involved with microfarming from working overseas primarily and working in Africa. And I came to notice people were having hard times growing food, and water seemed to be pretty scarce for a lot of people. And so I became very interested in ways to grow food in complex or limited resource areas, so limited food or limited access to water. And at the same time, a lot of what I do is a synthesis of all different types of art. So fine arts, biology, agriculture. And so what we'll see tonight, we'll talk about is just a combination of all different sciences all mixed together and to new and unusual forms. So
you're a stonemason, which is a very heavy, complicated art form. How did you get involved with that?
Well, at a very young age, and my family's been working in that materials for about 500 years or more on my Italian side. And so it's kind of in the blood. But right out of high school, I started working with a local Italian masonry company. And it was very heavy work, but I thought I better pay attention. And 40 years later, I'm still doing it.
So you were an apprentice first?
Apprenticed as a helper. And at a certain point, I was offered work with Peace Corps in Africa, and they invited me because of my masonry experience. I got work in equatorial Africa with the U.S. Peace Corps building schools. So I'd live in a village for a year, and I'd teach the men masonry construction. Oh. And in that process, I noticed people didn't have good drinking water. So I was able to apply for grants to get well drilling equipment. And so early on, I was working with water and water containers and storage containers and gardening kind of early on in my career.
And so you brought in some images of some of the stonemasonry that you've done using water and also fire. Mm-hmm. And so let's take a look at some of those images now.
Sure. What we're seeing here is I work with, I like to work with all the elements. And this is a project in San Francisco for the Cat Taylor residents. But I've learned to work with domes and curving and masonry, and I like to make my work look very light, like it's floating, because stonework is very, very heavy. So I often like to underlight my structures, and also I always like to work with the elements. I like to work with fire, water, earth, and just to create an environment, so a sense of welcome.
So is there water in that structure?
This one, in that project, there's lots of water. There's waterfalls and hydroponic gardens, and this is just one facet of that project.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Thank you. This is, what we're looking at is a trout pond that I turned into a large banquet table. So the concept was to pull the pond up out of the ground so we can sit around it, and it just creates these beautiful environments for having large parties.
About how long is that?
It's 50 feet long.
Wow.
It's 7 foot deep. And we'll see there's stainless steel rails in there just for the next generation in case they don't want to raise fish. They can use it as a lap pool.
It's a lap pool.
It's designed as a lap pool.
And then what is it made out of? How did you create that?
It's a masonry structure, and it's stone, clad in stone from Brazil, and the flooring is stone from Egypt.
And inside the structure, is that also stone?
It's built with concrete block and
So
steel. And
concrete block, and the lights show the fish swimming
right.
in.
And water drops off the edges and goes into the floor, and then it's pumped into a pump.
Off the edges of the table.
Right.
Wow.
Forms a nice sheet of water, and it's uplit.
Beautiful.
And that project was the impetus for the other projects we're going to see, because that water was so loaded with nutrients that we wanted to take that water and run it through vertical farming systems, and that led to the series of inventions that we'll see now.
So the fish create the nutrients.
The fish effluent creates a nitrogen or ammonia that can be recycled through plants, and the plants metabolize the nitrogen and ammonia and turn it into a nitrite, then to a nitrate. But it filters the water for the fish, and the plants take off. They go really fast and very healthy with a pretty high nutrient load in the plants.
So the water goes back into the fish
It recycles.
pond.
It's everything circular. So water runs through the plants back into the fish, and it continues on a cycle.
Wow. Well, tell me a little bit more about microfarming. What does that mean?
Microfarming is a word that implies in a very, very small area you can grow food. So on your home, business, schools. And so people, for the first time ever in history, more of the population lives in an urban environment. So more than 3.5 billion people are now living in cities.
Wow.
And so their access to arable lands and even fresh water is limited. So to be able to recycle water at your home and to be able to grow food on your balcony or deck or fence was something that we came across and have developed and been working on for years now.
That's amazing. So would this also create drinking water for people?
Well, yes, especially in a more emergency type situation, because some of the very early structures we did was originally designed for refugee camp type situations. We have very limited, or your water isn't so clear, so to speak. The gardening and even in running it through the fish and stuff makes the water very close to potable, and it's easy to go from there to potability.
Very interesting.
And also the other underpinning part of the structure is that the water in a lot of our homes eventually are going to have to be recycling water. Eventually, each home's going to have to be recycling.
Right.
So the basic science for doing aquaculture and hydroponics is very similar to systems that you use to recycle your water at your home.
And a home could recycle its water.
Homes can
through a
recycle. The
garden?
companies we've been working with in Germany, they claim they can recycle 85% of your home water. That means washing machine, dishwasher, sinks,
Wow.
tubs. Most of your gray water can be recycled and used again for showers and laundry type work. It's not necessarily for potability, but it can be reused over and over, 85% of your water.
Wow.
So a lot
just
of this
cycle through.
Right. So the basic science of doing the gardening systems, the basic science can be adapted to a home recycling system, water recycling system.
Well, you brought in some images of some of those gardens that are in homes or you've created for businesses. So let's take a look at those now, and you can tell us about
Sure.
the designs.
Sure. This, what we're looking at, is the sun curve, and this system, we'll call it a recombinant invention generator. By creating this system, it has spun off over 7 other inventions, and the main interest has been through education systems for schools. And many schools are interested in this system because it really takes the compulsory education system and makes it tangible.
Right.
So science, math, climatology, microbiology, it can be demonstrated in this structure. So basically, it's solar power, wind turbines, batteries, plants, fish, and a weather station combined together in a closed loop system, and it powers itself. And after I created this system, I went to UN High Commission for Refugees and said, hey, can you use this in your camps? And there was a real interest. I mean, they were thinking.
So what is the structure made out of?
The structure of this is stainless steel.
It's a beautiful design. I like the curves, and
Thank
really
you.
put some
The
attention
aesthetics.
into that.
Aesthetics are very important because it's a storytelling device more than anything. And the aesthetics had to be good enough to get people's attention. This was built, the main structure was built by William Swartz, who's a steel sculptor and artist up on Skyline above Palo Alto. And he's been a mentor of mine over the years, but he helped design and build the stainless steel structure. And the fish tank part was designed by Object Assembly in San Francisco. And also all these things we'll look at isn't just me.
Right.
It's a collaboration of a lot of different artists and scientists and creative people to create these things that we'll be looking at.
Let's take a look at the next one.
This is kind of important. This is essentially the same structure, but because I'm a mason, I figured out how to have some rocks in there. So those are baskets of rocks.
On the bottom, that you're standing next to.
I'm standing next to the Sun Curve, early version, with rocks, and we would run water through rocks and put the plants in there, and it worked pretty good except it was very heavy.
Right.
And
what's there on the top?
The top, you were looking at one of the, it's an arm for the wind turbine that was on. This is an early version of it. The idea, again, was to have the wind turbine charge the batteries and the solar panel charge the battery, and it runs on a relatively small pump, and the water would trickle through the rocks, hit a scupper at the bottom, and run into the fish tank, which you can see kind of behind me, and just recirculate in a loop. And the idea was to show that you could grow food in almost anything.
What is this made out of?
So the rock idea didn't turn out to be such a great idea, so it was a little heavy. So we evolved into a fabric, which we're working with today. So the fabric we call this a stretch garden. It's like a drum head. It's just stretched in midair. It's 1 inch thick or less, and we get a full garden of leafy greens and collards.
Planted into fabric.
Just growing in fabric with no soil. The water trickles through the fabric. It's caught in the bottom scupper, and it's recirculated with nutrients.
That's amazing.
And basically the fabric works as a capillary. And then we tried to make this product more available to the homeowners. And so this is a wall garden, and it can attach, just hangs on a wall. It holds 8 gallons of water, and you can have a garden anywhere. Yeah. And it uses very little water, and most we call it hydrocentric. So you're more focused on shepherding your water resources than anything. So for people who have limited water access, this was an attempt to just really use very, very little water in gardening.
But it's also beautiful. When
it fills out, it looks like a painting of plants. And you can actually plant the plants in a way that's very aesthetic and on designs, and they can be flowers or herbs. A garden that big is like 30 inches by 30 inches. It grows enough for a whole kitchen herb garden.
Oh, yeah.
And so San Francisco Flower and Garden Show had asked me to do some work for them, and with the company Inca Biospheric Systems that I was working with at the time, we designed and built 2 rotating towers, so 20-foot high towers with lettuce primarily, and they rotate 1 revolution every 3 minutes. And so if you have a limited footprint, like a deck or something, you can grow quite a bit of food. These are a little eccentric because there's a tall.
So the sun gets all the way around.
So
all
the sun
the
gets, and the plants seem to grow extra fast on that system. We call it the merry-go-round effect. Just because they're moving, they seem happy and they grow faster. I'm not exactly sure why.
And what's in the middle there?
In the middle is an old satellite dish that was repurposed. Again, we're working with the fabric. We can cover anything with the fabric.
Right.
And the idea was to have it track with a solar tracker to follow the sun. And it's planted in a way that it looks a spiral. It's just different lettuce, colored lettuce, so it looks spiraled.
It's beautiful. Well, you brought in one of your gardens.
Yes.
That you're going to demonstrate for us. So why don't we go over there and take a look at that?
Sure. This is a freshly planted wall garden. It was just planted today, actually, because the seasons are changing. So right now we're starting fall, and I planted this garden with brassicas type plants that will do good in the wintertime. So this is the wall garden, which you saw a picture of earlier. It hangs on the wall with just a clip. And the water, it has a reservoir, it holds about 8 gallons of water. And the plants are just growing in felt. So we're just using 2 layers of felt. In this case, this is a felt from jute. So it's an organic jute fiber and can be recycled, composted at the end of its grow season. And
so the felt is used once?
The felt is used once. It can be used for a long period of time. Sometimes after it's grown, I'll separate the felt, lay it in the sun, break all the roots off of it, and reuse it. But when it does break down, it's organic. And we add hydroponic nutrients to the water. Plants need 16 different nutrients, and so the water recycles through here. And in hydroponic farming, this is basically vertical hydroponics.
Right.
In hydroponic farming, the water wets the roots and then shuts off. So basically the water is coming through capillarying through the felt, wets all the roots and then shuts off. And every 15 minutes it comes on and off. So
there's a timer.
There's a timer involved.
And a pump that goes.
And a pump,
through
and
here.
at night when the sun sets, it's shut off because it doesn't need to have the garden on. And I'd like to show you how we plant.
Yeah.
So I bought some water here. We take a start. This is, I think, a broccoli plant. And we take the soil off the roots. So I'm using a little bit of water in this can. And we take more or less, usually take all the soil off, but something like this is fine. Thank you. Thank you.
That's up for you.
Okay, thank you, that's it, done. So we take the seedling, and there's slots in the felt, and we put it in here, and it creates a pocket and holds the roots tight.
And the felt in the back does not have a slot, so it's
No,
holding
just in the front, it's
together?
like in a sandwich, and the roots grow into the felt as if it's soil. The roots don't know, the plant doesn't know it's not in soil.
This is pretty stiff and it's thick.
There's 2 layers. This is a 1/4 inch thick, and the back one's like 1/2 inch thick.
1/2 inch thick.
And
so.
it just pulls the water through it like a sponge. And basically,
What is the outside?
this is a plastic housing, a very, very sturdy. We've had the idea to be able to rotate these fresh through restaurants or through the greenhouse, plant it with fresh herbs or vegetables and flowers, and just be able to rotate them as a business so you can come change them out. So it's a very sturdy construction. And once it grows, it's hard to see right at the moment, but it creates just a huge shock of plants. It's very beautiful. It's like a painting. It's an interesting way to paint.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So why don't you show us one more flower? Put it
Okay,
in there.
this is very interesting. I'm working with edible flowers. These are pansies, but in salads they look outrageous. And we have one more of these broccoli type plants here. I'm just going to rinse this off a little bit. Thanks. I'm going to set that in this pocket like this, excuse me.
So you never have to water this yourself?
Well, the thing is, although it's got water and it holds water, it uses about 1% to 10% of the water normally used for farming or gardening. So it's a very limited water usage.
So would I have to add water to the tank?
The water, depending on sunlight, but my tank, it lasts for about a week average. About once a week you have to check and make sure there's water in it. So some of the work I've done and people we spoke to in the Middle East and Dubai and China and Japan are like, could be big, especially for people in apartment buildings in China that have no access to the earth. So it's a way to get, and the main focus, what we have been working on, is to have a nutrient density. So the food, not only are you eating the lettuce or kale or chards, but it's high nutrient density, and we have ways of monitoring the bricks levels in the food.
Do you put some nutrients into the felt as well?
Yes, what we're actually doing is simulating soil, and by putting microorganisms in here, we inoculate this with living bacteria. So as plants in actual soil, it grows in, the roots grow into billions of bacteria and the microorganisms in the top inch of soil. So basically we're simulating, we're trying to simulate the top 1 inch of topsoil in the fabrics by inoculating with microorganisms.
That's fantastic. So you brought, these wall gardens also work with aquaculture and growing fish as well. So you brought some images of that in. Let's take a look at those now.
Thank you.
So what is this one?
This is a close-up of one of our fish tanks, and there's 2 ways we look at it. In aquaculture, aquaponics is a new term of farming. It's the farming of the future, is raising fish and plants together. So you have a fish tank, and you have your plants in either floating or vertical situation, and the water from the fish tank is circulated through the plants, through the grow media. So in a loop, because the effluent the manure from the fish is very high in ammonia and nitrogen and nitrates. And the plants really grow very, very fast. Anytime we work in aquaponics, we get a high nutrient load in the plants. The plants seem to grow extra fast, and the water is maintained great for the fish. This photograph here is showing the water, and it almost looks like embryonic fluid. It almost, it's just so full of life. In this case, we're looking at goldfish. We work with, so there's two different systems. You have like goldfish koi for the aesthetics, and otherwise you can grow a meat-producing fish like a tilapia or a trout or a catfish, and they'll also create a farming system like that. That you can work with those two elements. Again, what we really try to do is keep it as an art form and keep it beautiful to get people's attention. You often see aquaponics in big plastic tanks. This is a glass tank in front of a client's home, and it's got lights in it at night and a lot of oxygen. And you can see on the wall next to it is a vertical garden, and the water circulates from the garden back into the fish tank in a loop. And it just creates
is there a bubbler in the bottom?
Yes,
as well?
I like to put. There's a lot of oxygen in the bottom. We put quite a bit of air, again for the aesthetics. And the fish really love to be in a high oxygen environment. They swim around really fast, and that's a good sign when you see fish. That means they're happy. So again, working with these fabrics, grow media, we call it a bioquilt. It can be on any shape and any form. And this one was developed as a rotating garden. It's 7 foot tall. So if you're in a city environment and you have 4 square feet, you could have a 40 square foot garden.
Wow.
So this garden is loaded with leafy greens, some flowers.
And what powers that one?
It has a small electric motor that turns the revolution.
You plug it in.
Yes, that's one of the elements that all the gardens we're looking at are electric. And which has been interesting when we're trying to look at third world development or poverty mitigation, because often the bottom billion part of humanity is also the bottom billion that does not have electricity. So it's been a challenge to be able to figure out how to lift water up without electricity. Again, on a rotating concept, this garden was built by Object Assembly in San Francisco, very beautifully done. This was for the Plastiki boat. So the boat was made out of 12,000 plastic bottles. It was a David DeRocha's project, and it sailed from San Francisco to Australia, and we designed a garden for the mizzen mast.
Grow food on a boat now.
Grow food on a boat at leafy greens, and it also rotates. And also, this particular garden has a rain catchment system, so it's designed to catch rainwater.
That's great. And the next one?
This was, again, going back to aesthetics. The idea was to create something, again, storytelling gets people's attention, and we're looking at about a 20-foot tall sun curve structure that is growing food, and again, it gets people's attention, and it adds a message to it itself. Again, taking the concept of growing food in fabrics, schoolyards and schools are very interested in being able to take their chain link fences and plant it. In a lot of cities, you're not allowed to dig into schoolyard grounds for various reasons. But the fences can be planted, and it does lose kind of the schoolyard chain link look, you know, and it makes it very beautiful, and schools are interested in growing stuff that the kids could eat at lunchtime.
Excellent.
Conceptually.
And finally, another beautiful wall garden.
This garden is at the Gave restaurant in Mountain View on Castro Street. It was designed so as a piece of artwork, but it grows mints for the mojitos and different herbs that they use for cooking, and it just looks nice, and we're replanting that tomorrow with a bunch of flowers and stuff to make it more interesting. But it's a most recent garden we've built.
So, tell us a little bit about what you think the future of microfarming will be.
Well, as I see things going in the world, I think each home needs to be self-sufficient on some level. And being able to grow food at your own home, maybe create your own power, maybe recycle your own water, is going to be important as we go through time now. And we're entering a new world, new rules. And we want to really try to help people convert their lawn, their home, their yard, their business into small food growing systems for nutrition, but also for beauty. And it helps change, helps educate people and the kids and next generation. So it's very beautiful, it's very interesting, and creating an art of the future in a way.
So the sun curves that you created, how could that help people in poverty and refugee camps? There are millions of people around the world. What could they possibly gain from this?
The UN High Commission for Refugees is expecting 200 million refugees. Right now it's about 45, 50 million refugees and internally displaced people. And they're expecting 200 million refugees because of hydraulic poverty. Drinking water is disappearing. And so again, it's kind of up to us individuals, no big government benefactors, but us individuals to try to figure out how to design systems and ways to go into the future. And so the sun curve type system was really designed originally to create electricity and water and communication immediately in a campsite situation. However, when you're under UN protective status, refugee status, the average stay in a plastic tent is 17 years.
Wow.
So we were proposing, okay, 17 years in a tent. All right, why don't you make it out of these fabrics where you can plant the tent? So you're going to be depressed. You can grow food in your home, on your home. And that concept can go into our modern homes. The home can be designed where you actually plant the walls and recycle your water in the structure. So when you look at poverty mitigation systems, in that we get market products for the first world, for the modern world, the Home Depot-ish kind of world.
So we could help create it, fund it, and
it works both ways. Things that would work good for poverty also work good for us in our modern homes and society and
That's
schools.
Fantastic. What a beautiful vision.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much
much
for
being here at Talk
interested.
Art. Yeah. And thank you for watching Talk Art. It's been a great show. Beautiful work. Thank you.
I'm hoping to continue to develop it, and so far we're getting great results.